Well, greetings. This is Dr. Dean Blevins again, and welcome to CD 605 Gospel Catechesis. This is just a short orienting video to kind of help you understand what's expected during the semester, and particularly using Canvas and what are my expectations. And we're going to talk about probably the single most important assignment other than the group assignment around the project that you have. And interestingly enough, we're going to be talking about your discussions on Canvas and the way I tend to utilize the Canvas board, and then how I expect you to sort of engage online, and then also how I tend to grade from that standpoint. So bear with me for just a moment or two as we get through this. Just a reminder again, if you're at the home page and I'm looking at a previous edition of the course, that you can, well, find a lot of things just by looking at the navigation side of the board. But I'm going to click on the modules. And after the kind of general course information, the rest of the class is set up by weekly modules. And that's how you can navigate it. During the summer, there's only 12 weeks. The rest of the semesters, normally there are 14 weeks. And depending on where the break falls, it really has a different kind of flow to it. So I'm just going to kind of talk generally, though, that you will see week by week what's expected through the modules. Usually you will find the way I do things is that there might be an introductory lecture, or there might be sometimes a precipitator that's like a video clip. Good examples down in week 5. That's a song, just a kind of way of setting the theme. But most weeks, then the most important thread that you're going to connect to falls right after that opening kind of prompt. And it will always be about, you'll see the phrase discussion. And you see week 2, discussion. And week 3, we lead with discussion. And so those are probably the most important pieces in the module for you to pay attention to begin with. And then normally after a period of time at the end, you might see week 2 is a good example, a summary. In week 3, a summary. Week 4, a summary. So pretty much the bookends of the week really begin with a reading and discussion, or viewing and discussion, and they conclude with a summary. If you're in the modules and it looks a little bit hard to navigate, I've already mentioned this, but you can always go over to the syllabus, and it's a little more clear, the reading, and then the summaries and follow right after, so that you can see this in a more uniform way of engaging that. The only thing is, in the syllabus, some of the writing assignments sort of appear from that standpoint. Same thing with the assignments tab. If you go to that, most of the time, if you're trying to figure out where you are, the simplest way is to say, here's the reading, here's the summary for week 2, here's the reading, here's the summary for week 3, and on we go. So there are various ways to get to that discussion assignment and how it's assigned. Um, then once you go online, a lot of times when you get to, and I'm just using an example from a week 7 for this particular class, where when you open up the discussion, as I showed last time, you will always find your assignment there when it comes to what's assigned reading for that week, what's expected if it's a viewing for that week, or if it's an audio version for that week. Whatever I'm assigning for you to engage will always appear in that opening discussion thread. Anything else, as I've shown in a previous video, that might show up in the modules are supplemental, but normally this material is, or sometimes if I reference a lecture or something like that, it might appear separate, but most of the time you're going to find that information actually at the very bottom of this opening discussion thread, so that you can get everything you need most of the time right from the discussion board. Then what are you assigned to do? Well, basically from Monday through Wednesday, there's time set aside for reading, and I would encourage you to use that time wisely. There may be a couple times where you fall behind a little bit, particularly if it's a large amount of reading. But I would say get as much substantively engaged at the beginning of the week, excuse me, as possible, so that you can lift out sort of key insights and ideas that sort of jumped out of you from the reading. Now, you do not have to summarize everything that was assigned in that opening reading for that week. Say it again. You do not have to summarize everything. If you did, you would be writing 3, 4 pages sometimes of massive summaries, and that is not the design of the discussion. What we want is for you to identify something that is substantive to the assigned work for that week. So it's not a rabbit trail, but it really is something important that you identify with, that you can talk about it and summarize that big idea, sometimes a couple of big ideas. If we're covering, say, 3 or 4 chapters, you don't have to summarize each one of the chapters, but you might lift out 1 or 2 big ideas across that reading, and then offer that as a part of your initial reflection by Wednesday evening. And so it might look, well, here's a good example, kind of a 3 paragraph sort of opening, and I'm just going to go pretty quickly. Or here's one that wasn't even quite, well, excuse me, here's another one that's about 2 paragraphs. That's an initial opening. Here's, and I'll slide down one more time. Here's another one that is, again, and this actually is a pretty good example of something I'll come back to. But here's another one that is a long paragraph, probably even a little bit longer than I anticipated. But this would be an example. Now, note a couple of things that's important. As you're offering the information, cite where you're finding it. Now, it can be something as simple as, if you can see the cursor, a page number and a parenthetical. If we're only engaging one reading for that week, and there are times where you can, as this author did, you can connect ideas from 2 different places, and so you show a page number, or 3 different places and another page number. That's very important, because what I want you to do is to be able to lift up ideas, but then help your classmate know where you got those ideas. And that will really help continue the conversation after you have posted that initial thought or idea. And that becomes probably something very important. Here's another example, pages 68 and 69 out of this reading. And it just provides a way of engaging and getting a big idea out there. Now, once you've done that, and once the rest of the class is posted, sort of those initial ideas on Wednesday, then the rest of the week is an interchange on Thursday and Friday between each other, sort of reflecting and engaging. Sometimes I will jump in as well, but normally if I do, it's just, it might be for a moment of clarification, but I'll be honest with you. I really think that discussion boards are a place for you to build ideas together. I'm more of a guide on the side than a sage on the stage. So sometimes what I'll do, and this is a good example, where I'll just offer resources and ideas alongside of the material that is occurring in the class. So I'm just saying, if you're interested in this idea, look further. But you'll notice what you get then is a kind of thread of discussions that follow underneath by different people, including myself again, but just sort of engaging, thinking together until finally, and this is a good example where you have multiple threads and different ideas until finally the thread sort of ends, which in this case is pretty far down for this opening thread, which tends to happen sometimes. Why is that important? Well, the whole idea of the class is not so much that you summarize all the reading, but that in your initial posts and then in the responses and engagement, sort of the fullness of the assigned work for that week will still become evident, but it becomes evident through the interaction of your classmates with your thinking and your interaction with them. And yeah, sometimes I will expect if you're doing a response to someone that you can still reconnect back to the text. And so you might even cite the text as a part of your response to help move the conversation forward. I am normally not very happy with responses that just say, I really like what you had to say. I call those attaboy or attagirl kinds of statements. That doesn't tell anything more, but if you say, I really appreciate this insight because it connects to another thought I saw in the reading, and you again show where that's connected, what you're doing is that collectively as a class, through our online engagement, we're reading around the book that's assigned for that week, or conversing around a video or an audio clip that's assigned for that week, and we're building our knowledge together. The sort of minimum assignment for the week is to post initial comments by Wednesday and then provide 2 responses by Friday. That is minimum. That's not maximum. You don't get full points just because you come back in and do 2 responses. You do not have to do 30 either. Normally, I'd say somewhere between 3 or 4 responses tends to be enough. The reason is that in your class, in your section of the class, there can be anywhere from 10 to 15, even up to 20 people. And by the time everybody sort of chimes in for the week, you begin to get a sense, and let me just scroll down here, a sense of the range of information, concepts, ideas that you encounter during the week. And yeah, there's some simple moments in those, I respect those, but there are also really substantive moments where the interaction is pretty intense before it's all said and done. Now, um, that gives you a sense of what happens between Wednesday and Friday. We are literally almost learning the assignments, assigned reading together through our initial post and our ongoing engagement with each other. I can't stress this enough. I am not looking again for your mastery over all of the reading at the beginning of each week, because that would be more of a correspondence approach. It's a lot more like coming to a class and sitting down and beginning to talk about what were key insights and having that exchange, trusting that, albeit online, there is a classroom conversation that really communicates what's important that comes out of the reading for that week. And you may have to say, I may have to say, trust me, but I've learned over 15 years of online instruction that we actually learn more through this kind of constructive approach of learning together than any one of us could learn if we sat down and did critical book reviews and critical assessments, viewing, and even critical reconceptualizations of assigned listening, if we did that on our own. This is actually a better process. Well, what do I do after that? Well, go back. I've already pointed this out. Then there is a summary at the end of the week. And you go, well, what's that? Do I go back now and summarize all the assigned reading, all the assigned work? No. The goal is to literally go back through on Friday night, maybe Saturday morning with a cup of coffee, knowing you've been engaged with this work during the week already. So I hope you hear. If you just post on Wednesday, post your replies on Wednesday and disappear, and you're not active on Thursday or Friday, then the Saturday assignment could be painful. Also, Asbury tends to expect for you to be online and engaged at least 3 days of the week. So I would encourage you to set aside and develop a rhythm for a Wednesday posting. It could be a Tuesday if that works better for you. If you get your reading or the majority of your reading done and you get that initial post in on Tuesday, that's fine. Take a breath and then come back on Thursday and engage. And that's fine, or wait till Friday since there's more material there that's available at that point. You set a rhythm that you use on a regular basis. But then on Saturday, and for some of you, if you take a Saturday as a Sabbath, then a very late Friday night. So that's the bad news. If you set aside Saturday, and I'm expecting you to put the work in on Friday night, but sometime on Saturday, show up, cup of coffee in hand, and then take time to just read back through and review the posts for that week. And you're not even going back to the books per se. You're just going back through the different posts, the different interactions. This is a bigger group. This was 20 people. Normally it'll be a bit shorter than this number. And then you will be asked basically to do one thing. And I've navigated through several things, but here it is. Um, and you'll post this just from a different week. Um, you'll post a summary of what you thought was important. Now you'll see here, because this is early in the semester, you have a lot of people still interacting with each other, even in the summaries. You do not have to do that. This is your synthetic understanding of the discussion at the end of the week. And so there's no expectation for a reply. Sometimes people read other people's summaries. If the Canvas course is set up, you can't read other people's material until you actually post, because I'm interested in your summarization of what was the key insights for that week. And then you can review some of the other people's summaries if that just helps reinforce your learning. And if you do decide to post a response, that's fine. I don't necessarily count that for you or against you. I just, it's more kind of commenting and offering something you think is helpful in light of what's going on. So just again to kind of summarize this, the Wednesday, whatever reading, or if it's Tuesday, that's fine. Whatever reading you've done, look for substantive ideas, big ideas, not rabbit trails, but sort of what you think were important contributions. You don't have to summarize all the readings, but what were some of the important contributions? Post, and I'd say paragraph, couple of paragraphs, depending on what you think of paragraphs. But post something that you think is truly worthy of that kind of work. Then, and it might be a couple of insights, not just one. Then, between Thursday and Friday, go back online, interact, and move the conversation forward. So don't merely just comment on something that you think is interesting. You might be tempted sometimes just to comment on it in light of your personal experience, but also can you think about how you move the conversation forward by reflecting upon something else in the reading that just sort of adds to those insights and moves it down the road. And then on Saturday, you come back, read back through, and write a summary that kind of, and again, doesn't have to be massive. A couple paragraphs would probably be more than sufficient if they're well done, not short paragraphs, but well done paragraphs that lift up what were key insights that came out of the class. If you want to name a contributor in that kind of key insight, you can do that. But mainly I'm looking for how you are synthesizing, not the readings, but your classmates' contributions in that summary from that standpoint. I want to point out one last thing as we close. You will see here in this class that general discussion had a section A and a section B. You won't see that. You'll probably go right to your section from the beginning. Mainly because to kind of help with class flow, I normally have at least a couple of sections of a class. It tends to reduce the amount of interaction, helps people get to know each other a little bit better. There are some classes that are small enough I can keep it all around just one section. But if it's a larger class, if it's going to run closer to say 11 to 15 students, then a lot of times I will make it, break it into per section, I'll break it into the two sections. So a lot of times you'll get to know about half the class really well during the semester. The bad news is this means that the app on your phone doesn't always work well. It's geared to this page. And if you type a response and you go, I can't find it, the reason you can't is because the app will only recognize it as a reply to the main page and not a reply to one of the sections. So this is the only limitation I have found inside the Canvas discussion app that I want to caution you with. You may use your app even to read what your classmates have said, but the minute you try to hit the reply bar, instead of being in section A, the bad news is you're back into the major section, and a reply here goes nowhere. Nobody sees it other than me. And so I will go ahead and say this is going to be times where you need to dedicate time on a laptop or a desktop computer and build a rhythm. If I could encourage you, and I'm just going to stop the screen share for a minute. I really want you to see my face. The most important thing you can do early in the semester, starting with week 2 in particular, is set up a schedule where you read and read to even if you haven't finished everything, but you have a really good handle on some of the key insights for part of the reading. There may be certain chapters that jump out to you more than others. You read, you make sure you set aside time either on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning to post that initial post. Then you set time. I would encourage you, if your schedule allows, maybe first thing on Thursday morning and Friday morning, or maybe depending on your work schedule, it may have to be on a late Thursday night or a midday on Friday, but take time to go back in and interact. And know that when you post, other people will probably interact with you as well. So this is one time where I would say take a few minutes, maybe on a Friday night, to actually see who's had comments with you so you can respond back. That's just a courtesy. Then if need be, on Saturday morning, then maybe the last thing you do is do those final responses to your classmates. Then take time, sometime on Saturday, just to kind of read through the full flow, and then go to the summary tab and write your summarization of what were the big ideas you thought from your classmates during the week. We build knowledge together. We build it by bringing what we see as our key insights from the reading to the online discussion. And even if I assign you more of a correspondence model of critical book reviews all semester, even if I were to do that, I hope you hear what I'm about to say. You might get the thesis, you might get the flow of the argument, but you wouldn't get every key insight out of the reading. Nobody would. So better to connect with things that are important to you from the very beginning. Have your classmates help you gain a bigger vision of the reading over time, and then allow the summaries that your classmates' discussions help sort of frame where the real insights are coming from. Do you risk missing something? Of course. Will you miss something crucial? Probably not. Uh, this is a different way of not only trusting our ability to engage the reading, but trusting our classmates and the way in which they prompt us to continue even deeper into the discussions based on their initial reading and their responses to you and to each other over the last 3 days of the week. Um, I have found that this really works better than almost any other method, and it comes the closest to what we often engage in a kind of seminar format when it comes to online discussion. Yes, I'll contribute. I'll even, as I've mentioned, there'll be times where I'll offer additional information. There may be times when I clarify something or offer an insight. Rarely will I correct someone. I actually find that classmates are pretty good at correcting each other about certain assumptions. You don't need me to be doing that. If I sense that there might be something that I need to sort of prompt or coach around, again, I will probably go back to the announcements section and just post something general there as a way of advancing the conversation, the way many times a professor would in small group discussion, where they would just sort of address the class as a whole. Well, I hope this is helpful. I will say this: I don't grade every week. You'll be surprised by zeros as assignments. I set these all up as assignments so that if weeks change, it's easier to move the number around. But how I grade is that I grade every 2 weeks on a 50-point scale. So yes, that's 25 points each week, but then I only grade every 2 weeks and I provide coaching at the end of those 2 weeks, so that you know what you've done well, things you might look at in improving. And normally I spend more time just kind of saying, maybe if you'll think about adding a couple of posts, or make sure you keep connected to the reading, just kind of general coaching, small coaching things. But that's when I actually assign the grade. Yes, it's 25 points a week. If you do not post, well, let me say it this way. If you post late, there will be a reduction. If you do not post at least 3 days a week, there will probably be a reduction. But most of all, if you do not get something posted by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday night, it will not count. Say that again. Everything you post during the week, I will consider for grade. If you do post at 11:55 on Sunday night, you may see a serious reduction because obviously no one's going to read it unless they're there online for the next 4 minutes. But on Monday morning at midnight, Monday morning, that week is done, and I will not count any posts made to the previous week. At that point, basically we've moved on to the next week. And for you to go back a week and then post insights at that point doesn't really help your classmates. Doesn't help them when if they want to log on and read all the summaries toward the end of the week. It doesn't help them in the discussion because they're not going to go back to that. It's almost like, one way to think about this in an online environment, it's almost like you've been in class with your classmates, you've sort of sat and listened, maybe you weren't quite ready to respond. Class is over, everybody leaves, and you walk back in at 12:01 a.m. on Monday morning and start talking into an empty classroom. No one's there. We've moved on. So be sure that whatever you're going to post, you post in that week. If you do not, and you contact, I had an emergency at the very last moment, then we might negotiate something, but usually it's not just reposting material at that point. Maybe something else more substantive that you have to do. If you anticipate a problem that week, let me know in advance. Most professors will tell you this all the time. I can work with you ahead of time if there's an anticipated conflict, a lot easier than when it comes to something that you just didn't attend to, and now we've moved into the next week. Those are very difficult times for faculty to kind of respond after the fact. If it is an absolute emergency, I will work with you. But if you just forgot, then understand then you're leaving points behind as you go forward. If you have in any way sort of approached other classes in such a way it feels more like a correspondence course where you kind of get the things when you can, in this class, that approach can sink you pretty quickly. If you miss 2 to 3 weeks in a row, you're watching 25 points a week disappear in the online discussion. And over time, that can do more damage than even some of the regular assigned papers, even if you submit one of those a little bit late. So build a rhythm. If you can set the rhythm by the end of week 2 to kind of know how you're going to engage in the regular in online discussion, you will actually do probably far better in this class than you would in maybe some other versions of online education that you might have encountered in the past. Okay? Well, I really do look forward to those discussions. I do. And they are normally more fascinating than you can imagine. So I'm hoping this will be a fun experience before it's all said and done. There'll be other videos on other parts of the assignments, but blessings to you. Take good care. Bye-bye.